Okay, complex country, Colombia, chapter 2. Colombia is the result of the integration of several processes of evolution and changes that involve a prehistoric experience, ethnic, social catastrophes. Several communities have made a result in mestizos, mulattoes, and the conception of an abstract homeland to later generate a hierarchy of warriors and soldiers to savage ideology. Regarding the prehistoric experience, we recognize the daily emotions related to our history and that these constitute part of our collective behavior that have less influence on us than the one that had our indigenous grandfathers and grandmothers with respect to the people of Colombia. Then it would be the result of integration of various processes of evolution and changes which led to a biological and social catastrophe with the arrival of the Europeans in the 16th century, since it destroyed the indigenous social hierarchy and brought various diseases that decreased indigenous population by more than 70% from there, the mestizos and mulattoes around the 17th century, because the European women have taken almost a century at the zero as the invaders have done, and then a new race have achieved the resistance to European disease. The assumption of an abstract homeland was generated by the beginning of the 19th century with a population of 2 million people. In the years of José Celestino Mutis, dozens of criollos have grouped who promoted formation of local boards and constitution and were tried and executed in 80 by orders of Fernando XVII. Then military gentlemen people with wild ideology in the 19th century, along with Bolivar and Santander, defeat the Spaniards. And at this time, both were under 40 years old. The military effort was too great and the organizational challenge was against the ideologies of that time, so a new country was created for the 20th century where the growth rate rises to 2% between 1905 and 1929 to 2.2% between 1945, if later it rises to a maximum of 3% and 1967. Mortality decreases and friction increase with the application of modern medicine and reached 4.3 million inhabitants in 1905 and then more than 20 million in 1971 and 40 million in 2005. With respect to people and classes, people through their interaction and their different economic activities to manage the form of the nations through a more uniform populations, starting with the feeders, who are the indigenous people who knew how to take advantage of fishing. The arrival of the Spaniards have changed eating habits and began an agricultural production that comes hand in hand with the armed conflict. This implies that many rural families abandoned their lands and the road as in full insecurities. Then there are merchants who carry out more usual economic activities to the Colombia families, where they usually transport things like gold, sugar, and became most productive. Tobacco was also grown and coffee was productive activity were organized from much communities, where coffee was one of the best things in productions and transport. For many decades, as an international negotiation from Colombia territory regarding the people we have the peaceful ones and the warriors, because Colombia is a product of war and peace. Then the armed conflicts with the pre-Columbian world and Pacific ended of migration and international ambitions. Find that the 80% of the 19th century was Pacific and the 20% was a warrior. There are also the rich and corrupt and poor people suffering illiteracy, and Spanish investment was also made in necessary buildings competition were well through crops, trades, smuggling slaves, and there was always an imbalance in the distribution between 80s and 90s years and increased due to the drug traffic, and today differences are greater and greater. The situation, the economy in the 20th century brought us the greatest amount of illiteracy and poverty for Colombia with 75%, and in the century 21, although education was not adequate, It had improved for the complex system in which we live regarding knowledge, pleasure, and creation. The conquest foresaid the human conglomerate to change their knowledge, pleasures, and creation of ceramics, mining, and the elaboration of objects to the needed of the whose have taken the territory, have learned to survive after losing everything. Then, at the beginning of the 20th century, we used the knowledge to pleasure and creation began again. The people had a time to create music, to create art, and to create things that make people happy and feel pleasures. The majority of these things, like Shakira or writers like Garzon, was some people that they, with their actions and texts, have collaborated too much to the nation to evade a feature or disappear the simplicity and complexity of Colombia as an identity in a global behavior. So it contrasts the complexity of the ecosystems with the other people of the country. That was the chapter 2. Thank you very much.
Chapter 2: The People of Colombians. About Colombia, the Colombians are a mixture of Asian, Europeans, and Africans who mix continuously in different physical environments and with different social education. After the independence, the population begins to increase rapid, caused by the decrease in mortality when applying modern medicine. The people and classes. And the first is a feeders. This is a responsibility for feeding the population in times of wars, such as street vendors and currents for the currents. The second, merchants. This this is has been the most relevant economic activity for Colombia in the city and the comprise and increase the socioeconomic level. And builders, the builders is of Piasan and now the producers. The producers is increases service for Colombia. And the last is the peaceful and warriors. This for history and orogenics in Colombia is the peaceful is so important with the warriors.
Hello. Um, Resme Wild Dance of the Millions. Compensations for the participation of the United States in the independence of Panama increased in the price of coffee, bananas, and tobacco. Criticism introduced the age of the living. Begins with drug trafficking, the most corrupt called the rich, Jamor in canon, the niet that deployment ideas and plans. Together with periodic booms in the some exportation products, including psychoactive drugs, have increased in the income and quality of life of millions of families who have gone from poverty to the middle class, or that they simply improved their food, their clothes, and their house with house tense incomes. Colombia today will have a very high percentage of the population living in the poverty. Simplicity in our society. As a group, we do not have the necessary complexity to recognize that the Colombian reality cannot be evaluated bipolarity as good or bad, as white or black. And we are reduced to extravagantly celebration to simple and indisputable triumphs or cruelly lacerants ourselves before undoubled failures. We are always ready to quickly find scapegoats or the attribute or ills to the lack of law or the domination of some group or a specific theory. But we don't go deep know the ways, the fundamental processes that have made us viable as a nation. The capacity for work that has been shown in the production of coffee, in the construction of house, in food, in commerce in general, in transportations, activities that have allowed or survived stands to the integrated work of millions of our compatriots, poor and rich people. Thanks for your attention.